Alright, okay, so ayan. Hello dears, welcome back to our pre-recorded lecture and our intro to parasitology. Alright, okay. So I think for the previous video, wala kayo siya na it's not properly ended. Sorry guys, ang hirap na 16 GB lang ang storage ng phone mo. Like, woo, stressful, Lord Jesus. Okay, but kailangan akong upgrade, but I cannot because I don't have the means. I don't have the modes of transmission. Joke lang. But anyway, sige na lang, laban lang ta. So for this part 2, we're going now to talk about the classification of parasites. We ended with classification of hosts, right, in the last video. For now, we're going to talk about the different types of parasites. So as you can see, there are also other types of parasites, no? Alright, okay. Ayan. So these are the classification of parasites. I mean, some of them lang, okay? In your review and maybe in the lecture with Ma'am Bernal, she will give you other types of parasites in terms of their habitat, in terms of their living criteria and all that stuff. So I'll leave that to Ma'am Bernal. Alright, so I just selected the most common or the basic. Alright, the fundamentals. So first is of course the endoparasite. So when you say endoparasite, by the name itself, it's the parasite that lives within the body. Alright, so inside the body. By the name itself, endo. Right. So when you say endo, it's usually denoting that something is inside a person, a body, or an animal, whatever. So it's still the same here. Endoparasite. Endoparasite, it lives within the body of the host, within, so inside, all right? And when it does live inside the body, it now causes what we call infection, okay? So the presence of endoparasite, because again, it's inside the body. So when this endoparasite invades inside the body, or it causes now symptoms, then it's now, this is now called infection. So when the endoparasite is present inside the body, it causes an infection. So generally, most of your parasitic diseases, protozoan, helminths, they cause infection. They are living inside the body, all right? And as for ectoparasite, by the name itself, it's the opposite. Ecto, it only lives outside or on the surface of the body. So surface. It doesn't necessarily go inside the body, okay? Unlike in your endoparasites. And when an ectoparasite is found in a host, it's now called an infestation, okay? All right, so gets the difference? Ectoparasite, infestation. Endoparasite, infection, okay? I do hope that's clear. All right. Again, by the name of ecto, it's only outside on the surface, all right? So do you have already an idea? So what are example of ectoparasites? Of course, you have some insects, okay, or arthropods that can be parasites. Example, ticks, okay? You have ticks, ayan. You have lice, of course, lice or kuto. So example, these are example of ectoparasites. They live only outside or on the surface of the body of the host, all right? Okay, and again, the presence of an ectoparasite causes an infestation. But if endoparasite, it causes an infection. Okay, I do hope na gets lang. I hope that's clear. All right. Now we go na to the next classification known as your obligate. When you say obligate, by the name itself, it means that it's an obligate parasite when the parasite really needs a host. Okay, it really needs a host so that it can live. All right. So its existence entirely depends on the host. Because without the host, it will die. All right? So by the names of obligate, so parang obligado, all right? Or obligated yun siya na there is a host to live in. All right? Because if wala host, it will not exist. All right? Ayan. So its existence depends entirely on the host. So most of its life cycle or ilang stage, a stage in their life cycle, kailangan dyan ng host para ma-complete ang ilahang life cycle. All right? Okay. And facultative, by the name itself, opposite of obligate, it can live with or without. So it can live with or without the host. So it can be free living, meaning it can live or it can exist in the environment freely or like happily without any host. But when this parasite is subjected or is injected or is found in the host, it can be parasitic also. All right? I hope that's clear. So facultative and obligate. Please take note of these two terms. You'll also encounter that in your intro to microbiology with the Ma'am Teddy Cobello. All right? So that's a different, still the same meaning naman, pero for intro to micro, you're focusing more on mga bacteria. All right? Obligate and facultative. mga bacteria, but still the same meaning. For our class, it's parasites, but still the same meaning. Obligate, for parasites, it really need a host, okay? All right? It really needs a host, yes, para makalive siya or to complete a stage in her life cycle or in its life cycle. Whereas facultative can live with or without a host, okay? All right, ayan. For intro to micro, obligate bacteria, they need something, okay, not necessarily a host, okay? All right. And facultative, they can live with or without this something. Example, oxygen, yes. You'll get to learn that in your micro. All right, okay. Now we go now to your life cycles. So for parasitic life cycles, general lang, general. What are the major components, okay? All right, ayan. So first we have, it can be simple to complex ang life cycles. I think in our class lab, will not, maybe I'll just introduce a little life cycles, maybe some of the most common parasites. But in your lecture with Ma'am Bernal, you'll get to be exposed to a lot of this life cycle. So it's important that you already have a good knowledge about it. Okay, so because again, it's one of the fundamentals of a parasite. Because how do you know, or how will you know, or like where do we come into the picture of the parasite's life? Asa tadapit. Okay, what, in my 13 years, asan ako doon? Char lang. I hope na-gets yung reference, no? Si Alexa Ilacad to Nash Hagwas. Char lang. Okay, drama. But yeah, that's the point of parasitic life cycles. Sometimes lumalabas din sa boards, like, what is the intermediate host of this parasite? What is the definitive host? What is the vector? Yes, so very important to know. Okay, all right. So of course, first is general composition is, of course, the mode of transmission. Of course, how do we get the parasite? Or how is the parasite transmitted from one host to another? All right. Next, we have what we call the infective stage. All right. So when you say infective stage, this is the stage that invades the host. Or this is the stage na makuha natin. All right. Or na makuha sa host. Like, what stage of the parasite's life cycle do we get na it's because of this stage that the infection then starts. Okay? All right. So yeah. So the morphologic form of the parasite that invades humans, that's infective stage. Okay? So by the name itself, infective, this is the stage or the form that we get or that hosts get. And from there, the infection then starts. Okay? All right? And when another one is diagnostic stage. When I say diagnostic, this is the form that can be used in diagnosing or that can be retrieved using laboratory methods. So yeah, the stage or still the morphologic form of the parasite that can be detected in the lab. Okay, all right. So by the names of diagnostic. So a good example, I'll give you an example. You have Ascaris. Okay, sige, very common. Ascaris lumbricoides, guys, or your giant intestinal roundworm. Okay, very common na parasite sa Philippines. All right. Iyahang infective stage, all right, or what the host get is, of course, embryonated ova, all right, okay, or egg, all right, ayan. And yung diagnostic stage, it could be pwede ding embryonated ova, or generally pwede po fertile or infertile na ova, pwede ring adult worms. Alright? Ayan. So, those are example lang of infective stage diagnostic. So, infective, by the name itself, this is what we get, or this is what the host get from the environment ba, or from another host, okay? So, embryonated ova or egg, okay? And ang diagnostic stage niya, meaning what we can see in the lab, alright, from a specimen, it could be fertile or infertile na egg, or pwedeng mismo ang adults. Yes, there are specimens that can contain adults, guys. Like, naadyo siya bitok na ni-appeal. Promise. Okay, alright, ayan. So, that's Ascaris lumbricoides. Okay? Alright, just some of the parasites. Just an example. Alright, okay. Now, another component, or a very important component of a life cycle of a parasite are your vectors, di ba? So, again, vectors are just, again, parang a carrier or a means of transferring. Ayan. Responsible for transmitting the parasite from one host to another. And most of the time, your vectors are insects. Okay, your arthropods, mosquitoes, ticks, lice, ano pa man, mga sandflies, basta mostly insects yun. And you'll get to know that in your lecture. Daghan kayong vectors. Okay? Alright, and yeah. I think I'll introduce some din sa atong class soon. Alright, okay. And we also have different types. Biological vector, when you say biological, the parasite is also harboring the vector where para sa iyahang development. Okay, so the parasite is actively multiplying inside the body of the vector. They are also undergoing sexual reproduction. Yes, so development and multiplication also happens within or inside the body of the parasite, of the vector. Okay, that's what you call biological. Whereas another is phoretic or mechanical. When you say mechanical or phoretic, gidalara siya, or it's a vector wherein it only brings, all right, the parasite wherever it goes. A very good example is cockroach. Oh my God, I hate this. Cockroach, ayan. So your cockroach is a mechanical or phoretic vector, okay? It does not, or the parasite does not like undergo development within the body of the cockroach. It just clings onto the cockroach para i-transmit siya from different areas, okay? Diba? This is very lihukan, it goes to a lot of places, diba? So that's why it can transmit a lot of parasites then. Because again, these parasites again are only clinging, they're only using the parasite as the vector as parang its transportation. Ayan. Okay, so it's not necessarily that it's multiplying within the body of the cockroach. Okay, wala po siya nag-sexual production dito, so it's just for that. Whereas example of a biological vector is mosquito for malaria. For malaria, your malarial parasite undergoes development within the body of the mosquito. All right, that's example of biological vector. Nagets lang? Okay, cockroach guys, please take note. Periplaneta americana. O, diba? Ayan, Miss Americana and the Heartbreak Prince. Joke. Periplaneta americana. That's a scientific name. All right. Okay. So very good example ha, cockroach. Okay. Unsa pa man? Should I say? So cockroach guys, it can contain a lot of parasites. As far as I can remember, iyahang legs daw may contain ascaris eggs. Iyahang mouth may contain legs niya. Legs. Iyahang mouth may contain Entamoeba histolytica na cysts. Okay, so just some of the parasites na nasa cockroach. I hate them. I hate those insects talaga. So please very dirty. Kana atong the cockroach that we have, okay. But there are some cockroaches na clean, all right? Okay. All right, so that's a vector. Ang point lang sa vector guys is it's just an insect, most of the time insect, that transmits the parasite from one host to another. All right. And here is an example of a general life cycle. So in anigid siya, cycle. So as you can see, paulit-ulit na siya, paulit-ulit. So it's divided into two phases. The first phase is what happens to the parasite inside the body of a human or a host, and what happens to the parasite outside, like in the environment. So example, in humans, of course, the humans contract the parasite, and then it causes infection, and then they multiply. And of course, since the patient is experiencing infection symptoms, example, diarrhea, all that, so the patient is also disposing or eliminating those parasites outside of the environment. Gets? So the parasite then goes to the environment, continues with its development, then goes to the water, example, or food, and then goes to an intermediate host, example, insects ba, and then balik na naman sa human. Ayan. So the cycle goes on and on. All right? So in a nutshell, that's the basic life cycle. It could vary from one parasite to another, okay, depending on the parasite. Okay. All right. And now we go now to some disease processes and symptoms. So what are some of the symptoms or that host or example humans may feel if they have a parasitic disease? So the major body areas or like systems, body systems that are affected, first is of course your GI, gastrointestinal. Most common affected is the GI tract and your urogenital tract for sexually transmitted parasitic diseases. You have blood and tissue, of course, malaria, your filarial worms. You'll get to know that in your lecture and in our class. Liver, lung, and other major body organs, extraintestinal. So usually, liver, lung, and other major body organs, this can only be affected secondary. Generally, primary good is naay gastrointestinal na infection, parasitic, and then ni worsen or ni gawas ang parasite, or the parasite moved out of the gastrointestinal tract and then moved to the other organs. Example, liver, lung. Yes. So generally, mo start siya gastrointestinal, and then if it's not like, addressed or it's not given proper treatment, then what happens is the parasite moves out of the GI tract and goes to the other organs. Example, liver, lung, and other body organs. Okay. And miscellaneous locations, CSF, eye, skin, extremities, usually rare, or other parasites, good. All right. But generally, the most common or the major system affected by parasitic diseases, or most of our parasites, is the GI tract. Okay? All right. And here are some symptoms. As you can see, diarrhea, fever, chills, etc., etc. Some of the symptoms are usually general. Like you don't expect it from. It's not distinct. Like it's just like a normal symptom of a normal disease. All right. But yeah, as you can see, these are some symptoms associated with parasitic diseases. And for treatment and prevention, these are some treatments and prevention. For treatments, of course, we have antiparasitic drugs. Example, albendazole. Ayan, albendazole. Ayan, so Zol, those mga Zol, praziquantel. Ayan, so you'll get to know that in your lecture. Praziquantel, diethyl carbamazine. Ayan, so di ba nag-pharma na? So these are just example of mga antiparasitic diseases. Antiparasitic medications, sorry. All right. And of course, change in diet, vitamin supplements, bed rest, of course. And for prevention and control, of course, awareness of parasitic diseases. There are still some, especially far-flung areas, mga nasa bundok, mga ganun, that they don't know these parasitic diseases occur or exist. All right? Ayan. And of course, protective clothing, insecticides, especially for insects or vector-borne. Those that use vectors, okay? For, like example, malaria, right? So we need insecticides, protective clothing, protective netting, good water treatment. Of course, it should be that your water is potable because there are parasites, diba, that can be transmitted by water. Okay, so example, and your amoeba, entamoeba histolytica, you have your giardia. Okay, all right. Good personal hygiene, of course, hand washing for fecal oral, right? Fecal oral routes. Proper sanitation practices, of course, proper, comfort room, disposal, sanitation, and all that. Proper handling, cooking, protection of food, yes, because again, there are some parasites that can be transmitted by ingestion, meaning nikaon, kumain ka ng undercooked, or it's not well cooked. Example, pork, beef, fish. Okay, so as in, it could be anything. So I think after parasitology natin na class, guys, mas choosy na mag-food. Okay, basin mahadok na mo mukha ng sushi or mga samgyup, yes naman. Okay. Pero ako, wala pa rin. Ang sarap pa rin, guys. So, I trust my immune system to combat these parasites, char. Okay. And of course, avoidance of unprotected sexual relations. So, especially that you are teens, no, I hope you're all open-minded. I'm sure you're mostly on the curious stage. So if you do participate in these activities, guys, mga sexual activities, please be protected. Medtech mo, guys. Please, okay? Examine your specimen well. Okay? That's very important in a medtech life. Examine your specimen well and be safe. Okay? Because you're a medtech. Alam mo na yung mga consequences ng actions niyo. Char. Okay. Alright, so that's for treatment and prevention. Now we go now to a few remaining slides na. So we go now to human parasitic diseases. So just an overview with parasitic nomenclature or naming and classification. So generally, of course, since your parasite name is a scientific name, so we follow scientific name rules. Right? So example, Giardia, loa-loa na lang. This is a parasite, guys, ha? Loa-loa. Alright. So, di ba, scientific names, they have two names. The first is the genus, alright? And the second name is the species, alright? And again, genus, dapat capitalized ang first letter, or uppercase ang first letter, alright? And the second letter, and in the species, ang first letter niya dapat lowercase. Alright, lumalabas din sa boards, guys. How is a scientific name written? Yes, lumalabas sa boards. And if it's computerized, alright, or if it's typewritten, it should be in italics. But if we write it in hand or like in paper, it should be underlined. Okay, so general rule na, basic rule na guys in writing scientific names. So we follow that also in writing parasitic or writing names of parasites. Please take note, okay? All right, ayan. Okay, okay. Now we go now suffix iasis to denote the diseases or conditions. Guys, rule sa aking class and wherever you go, please. Okay. Okay, kay ma-trigger ko guys, ma-trigger jud ko. If makadungog ko ninyo puhon in the third year ha. Example, this is a disease. Kanina lang para mas common. Of course. How do you pronounce it? I'm sure most of you will pronounce it as amoebiasis. Guys, please, now that you're in a parasitology class with me, okay, please we pronounce this as amoebiasis. Okay? Iasis, dili iasis. Dili siya amoebiasis. Amoebiasis. Another one. How do you pronounce that? Dili ascariasis ha? Ascariasis. Please take note. Iasis, ascariasis, amoebiasis, trichuriasis. Okay? Please take note. But if you have teachers, example sa lectures Mambernal or like other teachers who pronounce it as like amoebiasis, ascariasis, ayaw po ninyo i-call out. Ayaw po ninyo don't like kanang ayaw po siya ipakaulawa or something like, huy ma'am, di man ko na yun ana, like si Sir Mark ana siya na amoebiasis. No, don't do that. Okay? I'm just being particular here in our class and also when you be professional soon, especially if you go outside of the country, outside of the Philippines, you don't basin niya mapakaulawan mo or basin niya they make fun of you. Okay? When you pronounce it as amoebiasis, ascariasis, it should be amoebiasis, iasis, ascariasis. Okay, not only in parasitic infections. Okay, there are some like example fungal infections. Example, candida. Okay, so you pronounce that as basta there is iasis, you pronounce that as iasis. So candidiasis, not candidiasis. Okay. Whew, I'm doing it for your own good. Okay, please take note. Okay, so in our parasitology class, amoebiasis, ascariasis, trichuriasis. Okay? Alright. Ayan. Okay. And generally, this is our last, last topic, okay, is we have three major groups of clinically significant parasites. Okay? First is, of course, your protozoa, your single-celled parasites. So you have amoeba, you have mga giardia, trichomonas. They're all found in the protozoa family. I'm not saying family, chakto ba? But anyway, protozoa na group na lang. Okay. Next, you have the metazoa or the helminths. These are your worms na. Multicellular. So when I say protozoa, single-celled. Alright? So single like me. Char. Okay. So single-celled na ako diri sa protozoa. Alright? And multicellular meaning daghan yung cells. Metazoa or your helminths. And the last one is, of course, your ectoparasites, usually your arthropods, usually found are under the kingdom Animalia. Okay? All right. Ayan. So these are the three major groups of parasites that are affecting man. Okay. Now we go now to a flow chart that I personally made good for you guys. Char. All right. Parang summary na. Okay, guys. So disclaimer ha, I didn't follow like the phylum, mga ganon, kingdom, subphylum, because number one, I'm not good at that. Number two, kay medyo baka malibog mo. And it would introduce a lot of other names. But if you want to look at that, or if you want to be more specific, or if you want to read about that, then it's still found in, I think, chapter 1 of Zybig. Alright? Okay, so this flowchart that I will show to you guys is, again, I just made it. I simplified it in a way so that it would be much easier, all right, for you guys. So again, disclaimer ha, basin you may be wondering na lahi lagi itong sa book, like wala lagi itong mga phylum. So again, I didn't follow that. I just made my own flow chart na easy lang jud. All right, na parang simplified version. All right. So again, human parasitic diseases. Again, they are divided into, three major groups. Of course. The first one is, of course, the protozoans. All right? When you say protozoans, these are single-celled parasites. So, one cell lang. Okay? And you have, for protozoans, they are now divided into subgroups. First is, of course, your amoebae or your amoeba. All right? Amoebae. Sana all may bay. So, I'll give some examples lang. So, for amoebae, you have, of course, the very popular entamoeba, histolytica, of course. The only pathogenic Amoeba. So, usually, if you have friends or mga family members na nagka-amoeba na, di ba, very common, nagka-amoebiasis, not amoebiasis, okay, amoebiasis, alright, then most often than not, it's usually Entamoeba histolytica. Because again, this is the only amoeba that causes infection, alright, okay, ayan. So another one is of course, Naegleria fowleri, and Acanthamoeba. So, ano lang guys ha, hinay-hinay lang. Data mo introduce para dili mo ma-TMI. So, I'm just slowly introducing this because in our next pre-recorded lecture, there will be some parasites na ma-discuss. So, at least now na namoy parang idea content. Alright, okay. So, these are just some mga amoeba. Okay? Amoeba. Alright. Ayan. So, again, don't worry again, most of this will be discussed on your lecture. Don't forget, you'll go individually. Each amoeba you will discuss. Okay, don't worry. Alright. Next, you have flagellates. By the name itself, flagellates, nasalay, flagella. Okay, alright. So, ilahang locomotory organ or their organ for motion. Okay, para mulihok sila is a flagella. Alright? Flagella. Okay, very good example here. You have Giardia, Lamblia. Very common. And another one is, of course, kanina, Trichomonas vaginalis. Okay, these are all flagellates. They contain flagella. So for motion, for movement, they have flagella. Okay, all right. Next, you have ciliate. As you can see, Usara. So it's not there. We don't have a lot of ciliates that cause infection. Okay. We only have one medically important ciliate, meaning na siya cilia. Okay. You have Balantidium coli. Please take note. Balantidium coli, the only ciliate, okay, that causes infection in man, and the largest protozoan parasite. Grabe, dami ko na nasabi lang. Dami mga board exam questions na nasabi. Largest protozoan parasite, okay, affecting man, Balantidium coli, and the only siya lang nag-iisang ciliate that affects man. Okay. And last is your sporozoans. For sporozoans, you have a very good example of sporozoans. You have sporozoans. You have Plasmodium, which is, of course, for malaria. Plasmodium species. Malaria na siya, guys. Okay? Alright. Ayan. Okay, now that's for protozoans. So, that's the first group. The second group is, of course, your ectoparasites, or usually your arthropods. So, again, as mentioned kanina, what are example of ectoparasites? You have your lice, kuto, you have ticks, okay, you have mga mosquitoes, pwede rin, basta mga ectoparasites, usually arthropods. Okay. And lastly, you have the metazoans, or what we call as your helminths. When you say helminth, these are now your roundworms. So, mga bitok na yun, guys. This is, I think this is what you know. Mga bitok. So, we'll start first with your, the metazoans or your helminths are then classified into three subgroups. The first one is your nematodes. When you say nematodes, your roundworms. Okay? Roundworms. So, mura siya bitok. Mura siya earthworm of appearance. Okay? Worm good siya. Alright? So, a very good example is, of course, your Ascaris, Trichuris, ayan. Enterobius, ayan. Enterobius, katong pinworm ganina. You also have the filarial worms. You'll get to know that. Filarial worms, mga Wuchereria. Sa lecture na siya. And all that. Nematodes, roundworms. Okay. Next, you have also what we call your trematodes or your flatworms. So, flat siya na appearance na pagka-worm. Or other name is your flukes. Okay, flukes. Ayan, flukes. Okay, flat. Mura siya, yung appearance. Flat. Mura siya leaf. Okay, pero worm siya. That's a trematode, flukes. Okay. Good example, you have Fasciola, Paragonimus. Ayan. Paragonimus westermani. Sorry guys, wala din ko nag-underline, no? Sorry naman. But you get the point. Sorry. Sige na lang, good. Okay. And of course, very popular schistosoma. Schistosoma species. Okay. Yan. All right, flukes. That's the second, or trematodes, okay? And last is, of course, your cestodes, okay? Cestodes or your tapeworms, okay? So, maras lang tape og appearance. Tapeworms. Okay. So, ina nilang appearance, guys. Ayan, pag ganyan, parang tape. Okay? Alright, so, example, you have your Taenia species, pork tapeworm, Taenia solium, and beef tapeworm, Taenia saginata. Okay? Sige, ako na butang. Solium, para basin ganun mo mag-take note. Saginata. So, ang solium, guys, ang pork tapeworm. Saginata is beef. Okay. Please take note, guys, ha? Sana nag-take note ka. Another example is your Hymenelepis. Hymenelepis species. And another one is Echinococcus. Echinococcus species. Okay? These are your cestodes or tapeworms. Okay? So, again, there are a lot of other tapeworms pa, flukes, roundworms, amoeba. Again, just some of the examples lang. Alright? Para dili ma-TMI. Alright? Okay? And again, don't worry, you'll go individually ana sa lecture with Ma'am Bernal. She will explain that with the life cycle. Maybe I'll introduce some lang po. Depending on our topic. But not all. Okay? Sa lecture na yan. Okay? Alright. Ayan. So basically, that's it for our intro. Quite a lengthy discussion kasi marami akong chika. Sige na lang. Give it to me na lang, guys. I'm worth it, char. Kasi naman, no, we don't know that each other that much pa because again, this is our first experience together as a class. But some of you, my second year students, I have already taught in the first year. Okay, so some of them, they already know my style. And ako mga jokes and ako mga kalat. But I do hope lang na, you get to appreciate ang ato ang lectures. But yeah, so that's it for our first lecture. So atong pictures, you can see those are different eggs and some worms. So you'll get to know each of this and ma-master na mo ana. Hopefully sa atong class and sa lecture po ni Ma'am Bernal. But thank you guys. So that's all for our for our second pre-recorded lecture, intro to parasitology. So I hope you learned something. If medyo TMI, okay, just pause for a while and then take a deep breath and then padayon, okay? And especially sa last nato na slide, katong flowchart, I hope you take note of some examples. All right? Because in our next pre-recorded lecture, which is the specimens that we can use for parasite examination, there are some parasites that are now going to be introduced. And these parasites are the ones that I mentioned in the last slide, okay? Some of them. So at least para di na ma-confused, okay? All right. So ayun guys, no? So I just wish we have a fruitful and a very fun. No, I'll try my best to make it fun then for you guys, and not to be that stressful naman or not too demanding. All right, hopefully with this semester, and I hope you get to appreciate me also as your teacher, Char. Nangitag validation. All right. So muna to siya. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in our next pre-recorded lectures. Keep safe and ingat. Keep safe and God bless. Okay.